612 An Introduction to God. Mitswah, Instructions. 11. Bynah, Understanding. The observant shall live. Religions comprise humanity's most deadly and debilitating plagues. They are contagious, spreading like a virus from one person's lips to another's ears, festering in their heart. Religion is a seductive pathogen because it masquerades as a vaccine against death when it actually hastens and assures mortality. Faith cripples believers, precluding the infected from fighting off the disease. Religion renders them incapable of diagnosing their malignancy and, thereby, prevents them from finding the cure. The epidemic spread of religion has sickened tens of billions of souls, resulting in their demise. Regardless of whether it is inherited from one's parents, chosen of one's own accord, or imposed under penalty of death, 90% of people worldwide are infected and will die as a result of Judaism, Christianity, Islam, socialism's secular humanism, or Hinduism. Infected souls will cease to exist as a result of the degrading nature of the disease. Judaism claims to be Torah observant while preferring their Babylonian Talmud. They claim to keep the high holy days, when they make a mockery of Yahweh's Miqra'ey. They even pretend to serve the God whose name they neither acknowledge, write, nor say. They have exchanged the most enriching relationship for a stifling pathogen. 613 I understand, as does God, that overall, Christianity, Islam, and communism have been far more lethal, sinister, and violent than Judaism. But, while this book, and Yahweh's book upon which it was based, are open for all to read, neither was written to Gawi, but instead Yisrael. And therefore, the most concerning plague is Judaism, the religion which is currently precluding Yahweh's desire to reconcile his relationship with his people. Against this menacing and pervasive plague, you would expect the creator of our world and the architect of the life forms religion destroys to speak out against the consequence of faith. And so, he does, specifically denouncing each popular variation, beginning with Judaism. Also interesting, God's most specific censures of religion criticize the precursors to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, ostensibly because Babylonian-based religions similar to them were practiced in and around Yisrael during the time Yahweh spoke through his prophets. So, while the current forms of Rabbinic Judaism were first practiced in the 2nd, 6th, 12th, 14th, and 18th centuries CE, Jews began antagonizing their God 1,500 years before Rabbi Akiba forced his variation of Judaism and false Messiah upon his people, precipitating the Second Roman assault of Yahuwdah, Judah. Yahweh's denunciation of religion begins in the Torah. He tells us that a deity by any other name is a false god. That alone is sufficient to impugn every religion. He then tells his people not to emulate the ways of the Goyim, Gentile nations, the very places where religion was institutionalized, became part of government, and thrived. In fact, as we consider the legacy of these civilizations, all that can be seen of them today are their religious monuments. The shrines of Babylon, the pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Greece, and the majestic tributes to the gods of Rome still stand as proof that their cultures 614 were dominated by religion, and that it was used to give credence to their despots and to justify their military conquests. God's aversion to religion continues in the books which follow the Torah, as we have discovered during our review of the 3rd, 4th, and 6th Marshal, Proverbs. His overt animosity toward religion reaches a crescendo in Yeshaya, Isaiah. We have already read through many of the latter chapters and will consider the prophet's most stinging rebuke in our review of his initial chapters throughout Observations. God's opposition to religion is further advanced in Marshal, Proverbs 7, which is also an open letter from our Heavenly Father to his children. In it, we find God pleading his case against religion to protect his family from this deadly disease. As we have previously experienced, before Yahweh attacks religion, he reveals the antidote. My son, Ben-Eni, my child, choose to observe, Shema, of your own volition, closely examine and carefully consider, thoughtfully evaluating by focusing diligently upon, paying attention to so as to be protected by, Kal imperative, my words, my answers, statements, and promises, Ema Eni, the declarations I have made and the proclamations I have avowed, my intent, my call, and my responses, my thinking and thoughts, the things I have spoken, the answers I have provided, and the promises I have made, especially, Wah. And also, my instructive conditions regarding what I am offering and expect in return, Mitswah Eni, the authoritative directions and written instructions which comprise the terms of my relationship agreement, from my, to consider the who, what, why, where, when, and how of Zawah, appointing and constituting the message and enjoining it by shouting out the instructions and directions regarding what 615 has been commissioned. Continually store them up within you as a genuine treasure, Zaphanethota, literally gathering them, genuinely cherishing them, and consistently depositing them within you, expecting ongoing benefits, creating an ongoing personal repository for that which is greatly desired and always valued, Kal imperfect Joseph. Marshall, Proverbs 7-1. By choosing to closely examine and carefully consider, Shema, by electing of your own free will to literally observe, Cal imperative, the terms and conditions of what I am offering through the relationship, Mitswah any, the directions and instructions which comprise my agreement, you will have chosen to live, Wachea, you will be revived, flourish, and thrive, remaining alive, Cal imperative, when, in addition, my Torah, teaching and guidance, Torah any, my Torah instructions and directions, is in accord with, are consistent with, the essence of your individual nature, shown, pertain to the person, perceived as the pupil and center of what is cherished, from each, individual and own, all things pertaining to, framing your perspective and becoming your focus, nota, of your eyesight and your perspective. Marshall, Proverbs 7-2. You should want to fasten them, kashahem, elect to bind them, closely associating with them as if wearing them, kal, relationally and genuinely, imperative, volitionally by choice associating with them by placing them, onto your fingers, aletsbota, the operative part of your hand, from tsiba, to dip it into a liquid which colors and flavors, i.e., to use your fingers to write, inscribing them of your own volition, katabhem, engraving them by writing and recording them, kal imperative, on the tablets, al-luvak, upon the hard file where the permanent memory is kept and stored, Lu is the place where important things are revealed, considered, and 616 emphasized, of your heart to influence your judgment and decisions, Lab Otter, on the core of your being where you process information and form conclusions regarding your life. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverbs 7-3. The more willing we are to observe Yahweh's testimony, to closely examine and carefully consider his answers and his promises, especially his conditions for participating in the covenant, the better equipped we will be to live a long and productive life. The world is filled with the fleeting and meaningless things humans have come to treasure. These include the heads of exotic animals hung as trophies and garish mementos declaring victory over opposing teams. In Islam, for example, the Dome of the Rock is nothing more than a trophy memorializing the Muslim conquest of Jerusalem. God consistently offers this same advice. Observe his word. Value the terms and conditions of the relationship. Closely examine and carefully consider his Torah's guidance. So why do you suppose Jews favor their oral law, Christians prefer their New Testament, and Muslims recite their Quran? Why pretend to worship the God whose instructions are completely ignored and then replaced? Hebrew poetry, rather than emphasizing rhythm and rhyme, is comprised of couplets which convey truth from a variety of perspectives, each affirming and augmenting the overall message. These statements serve as a wonderful example. Our Heavenly Father revealed that, by choosing to Shema, keep our eyes focused upon, closely examining, and carefully considering his binding covenant contract, we are choosing Chea, to live. And not only to live but also to be restored and renewed, to be nourished and grow. 617 Moreover, we achieve this result by focusing on Yahweh's Torah, teaching. This not only enables us to grow in understanding, but also the Torah provides us with the proper perspective to capitalize upon the directions and guidance which lead to an eternal relationship with our Heavenly Father. So, by bringing these couplets together, we find that Yah's word, instructions, and Torah are integrated and related. They are the source of understanding and life. When we observe one, we are considering the other and gaining from both. In spite of what virtually every religious translation has published, shown is not the apple of one's eye. It is not associated with fruit in any way. It is a compound of individual and own, all things which pertain to said person. And speaking of misappropriating, since even the religious translators realize that the Father is providing Torah, teaching and guidance to his children, why do they corrupt Torah to law elsewhere? This is not the first nor the last time Yahweh speaks of writing his Torah on our hearts. God, himself, has promised to do this very thing when he restores his covenant with Yisra'el and Yahuwdah upon his return on Yom Kippurim. He predicted, behold, a time is coming, Yamimbo, Yahowah, reveals well in advance of it occurring, Naum, when I will enter into and cut with, Karateth, the house of Yisrael, Beth Yisrael, and with, Eth, the family of Yahuwdah, Beth Yahuwdah, a restored and renewed, Jadash, covenant, Berith. Yirmiyah, Jeremiah 31:31. It will differ somewhat from, Lokar, the covenant, Habarith, which, to reveal the way to the benefits of the relationship, Asher, I entered into, Karat, with their fathers, Ethabhem, on the day, Bar Yam, I firmly took them by the hand and, with inflexible resolve, 618 overpowered the situation, Chazak Eni Bar Yod, to bring them out, La Yatzamin, of the realm of the crucibles of religious and political oppression, Erez Miraim. Relationally, they broke, Asherhem Para Eth, my covenant, Berith Eni, although we were married, Warnoki Baal Barhem, Yahowah, reveals through this prophet, Nahum. Yirmiyah, Jeremiah 31:32. For this reason, this is, Joth, the covenant, harboreth, which, to enjoy the benefits of the relationship, Asher, I will cut, with Eth, the house of Yisrael, Beth Yisrael, after that, Achar HaHem, prophetically declares, Nahum, Yahowah, I will provide, placing, Nathan, my Torah, guidance, Eth Torah Eni, within them, Bar Kirebhem. And integrated into their hearts, influencing their ability to make decisions, Wa Labhem, I will write it, Katabhai, I will be, Wahaya, their God, Lahem La Elohim. And they shall be my family, Wahem Haya La Eni Laham. Yirmiyah, guides, Jeremiah 31:33, as a responsible father, God, himself, is willing, and even committed, to do what he asks of us. This fatherly advice continues with, elect to acknowledge, Amar, of your own free will, choose to express, Kal imperative regarding, La, to approach and to move toward, the skill required to be perceptive and discerning leading to understanding, Ha Chakma, the ability to correctly associate and ascribe evidence to the proper standard, the talent to exercise good judgment and become wise, the aptitude to learn from instruction and teach after making the connections to comprehend, you are my sister, Akoth Eniota. You and I share the same mother and father, you are my beloved and we have an affectionate family connection, 619 from Ach, a kinship and reciprocal relationship, and, Wah, wise friend whom I know, acknowledge and recognize, Moda, my familiar acquaintance and intimate associate, from Ma, to ponder the implications of Yada, the one I know and understand, accept and acknowledge, recognize and experience, with whom I am acquainted with and profess. You should consistently call upon and summon her, Kara, you should invite her into your life, meet with her and welcome her, read and recite from her, Kal imperfect Jussive, 4, La, to approach and concerning, understanding and insights, Ha Bynah, the purpose of making the connections between things which reveal their meaning and intent so as to respond reasonably and rationally, to discriminate, and be discerning. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverbs 7-4. This should serve to dissuade people from faith, from blindly accepting what they are told to believe. Yahowah can be known. God's instructions can be understood. We are encouraged to observe and think so that we can comprehend his message. The primary benefit of reading Yahowah's word is that we come to know him, understand what he is offering, and appreciate what he is asking in return. But there are additional benefits, one of which is being insulated from illegitimate claims, making religion repulsive. By being observant, you will be protected, La Shema Otter, through close examination and careful consideration you will be kept safe, Kal infinitive, from, Min, the illegitimate and unauthorized, quickly spreading and hostile, Zar, scathing, adversarial, and alienating, all-encompassing, from Zara, scattering of nauseating and sickening seed which sows that which is repulsive and loathsome, disgusting and despicable, firestorm, Ishar, blazing conflagration, singeing flames, 620 devouring heat. Or female individual and wife if she is either very hot or a flamer, away from, Min, observing, respecting, or responding to a foreign influence, Nakaryah, developing a regard for and then acknowledging the allure of another culture, from the feminine of Naka, to be an observant and responsive foreign woman who is misconstrued. Her words, sayings, promises, and answers, Imahai, her discourse, are deceitful and seductive, Chalak, divisive and misleading, slippery and smooth, flattering while separating. Martial, memorable and meaningful sayings, Proverbs 7-5. Once again, we are confronted by the illegitimate and unauthorized Nakaryah who is responsible for sowing sickening seeds. She is the religious alternative to a spiritual mother, the Ruach Kodesh, separating her victims from the covenant family. She may also be the evil counterpart to Yahowah's Naka, observant and responsive foreigner who guides his people home. Should we seek to identify her further, the Nakaryah, as the counterfeit for a spiritual mother, was Asherah of Babylon. She, as the consort to Baal, the Lord, was worshipped in Yisra'el and Yahuwdah through temple prostitutes. Her cult and their priests were famously confronted, and destroyed by Elijah. So, with being one of the two final witnesses, it is poetic justice for Yahowah to have his Miqra'ey witness against what the Nakaryah has wrought, especially in recognition that Eliah's fight to the death was not the end of her influence. The Nakaryah has metastasized into Christianity as the Mother of God and Queen of Heaven, Mary, the Madonna. Further, in the broadest sense, the Nakaryah is the whore of Babylon. She is the mother of the harlots, giving illegitimate birth to religion, politics, and conspiracy. We 621 find her religious influence today in Roman Catholicism, and her political persuasion in the United States, while geographically, she still represents the legacy of Babylon. Further, since it is her deceitful and seductive words that are so devastating to God's people, I would be remiss if I did not bring your attention to the realization that Kabbalah, the basis of Jewish religious mysticism and occult fascination, is feminine, and the Talmud is Babylonian. No words have sickened more Jews. Religion lurks estranged from the covenant and thus outside of God's heavenly home. That is where she seduces those who are easily deceived into joining in because she is popular and made to appear attractive. For by, ky bar, through and with, the window, shalom, the opening design for the passage of light, of my house, Bethany, of my home, household, and family, around and behind the covering of my window, bod eshnab, I have looked down from above, shakaf. Marshall, Proverbs 7-6. Then, I saw, ra, indeed, I witnessed, among the simpletons and naive, the easily deceived because they are ignorant and irrational, harpati, with the malleable and readily persuaded who lack judgment and are foolish and easily seduced, from Partha, airheads who are gullible, enticed and misled, even betrayed to accept the broad and open way. So, I made the connection, and came to understand, recognizing, I was discerning and deduced the nature of the relationship, perceiving, that among, with, the children, benim, the young men and boys, there was one who scatters the sheep, someone who causes the flock to stray into a dangerous situation, overthrowing and inverting reality while yelling, of deficient character, lacking judgment, chaser lab, who was heartless, devoid of empathy and 622 thus a psychopath. Without the ability to process information or make moral decisions, incapable of reason and thus illogical, a worthless individual without substance who was totally estranged, devoid of everything which actually matters. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverbs 7-7. I know this man. I've written 4 books about him. He, by his own admission, was a wannabe rabbi who became demon-possessed. He became the most effective charlatan the Nakaryah would ever deploy, conceiving the religion that would obliterate the souls of billions while hideously tormenting Jews. His given name was Sha'uwl, which means question him. But wanting to be perceived as a Roman, he chose the name Paulos and then claimed the world for himself. He wrote and inspired the majority of the Christian New Testament, including his 14 letters along with the books of Acts, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, all bearing his brand. More than anyone past or present, he was the wolf in sheep's clothing, the one who scattered the sheep before devouring them. His voice was shrill and his words menacing. With them, he would invert reality, and become the greatest adversary Jews would ever encounter. Most of all, I recognize Paul from Chaser Lab. He was a true psychopath, completely devoid of empathy. His letters are those of an irrational individual, someone deeply twisted and perverted. And he was devoid of everything which actually matters, including a relationship with the God he falsely claimed inspired him. Should one be looking for an antichrist in the sense of being opposed to Hamashiach, the Torahless one will be indistinguishable from Paul. Wait, I can hear some protesting. Wasn't Yahowah's religious indictment against Jews, not Christians? Yes, but Paul was a Jew who claimed to be the foremost rabbi of his day. And that is just the beginning 623 of his story, because if it were not for Judaism, Paul would have remained a disgruntled outcast and laughingstock. Had the Jewish religious leaders gotten their heads out of their collective behinds long enough to recognize that Daud was the Passover lamb fulfilling Yahowah's promise to his people, there would have been no Jesus. Had the forerunners to the rabbis properly proclaimed Daud, David as the Mashiach, Messiah, there would have been no Christ. Christianity, or Christians. And if they had announced what Yahowah proclaimed about Daud, the world would have known the identity of the Son of God, precluding replacement theology from bolstering the most Babylonian of religions. Paul's conspiracy against Jews during his conception of Christianity was possible because Jews, cheated by Judaism, were blind. And as a result of what the rabbis wrought, Yahweh would be terrorized by Romans and Roman Catholics for 2,000 years. Apart from the delusions of Judaism, there would have been no diaspora or Holocaust. And there would have been no Muhammad, Quran, or jihadists terrorizing Jews either, but that's another story. However, we cannot lay all of the blame at Paul's feet or even at those of the rabbis, just as it is naive to pretend that Hitler was singularly responsible for the Second World War and resulting atrocities. The fact is, the Germans, Austrians, Ukrainians, Japanese, Italians, Spanish, and French were accomplices, accessories to the crimes. The best which can be said of them is that they were harpati, easily deceived because they lacked judgment and were ignorant, and irrational. God just revealed that ignorance and gullibility are the elixirs of religion, the culture upon which those of compromised character prey. Religious faith resides among those who are airheads, easily enticed, readily misled, and thereby, simply betrayed. And sadly, this describes most people, from the 624 religious to progressives. And thanks in part to the attack on reason promoted under the banner of political correctness by progressives, the condition is being expounded upon and exacerbated almost everywhere. The intellectual viruses of wokeism and cancel culture are challenging conspiracy as today's fastest growing, and least sane religions. This problem is so severe, and the consequences are so catastrophic, we have reached a point where no amount of evidence or reason, no matter the credentials of the source or the veracity of the argument, resonates with people of faith, even if their faith is in socialist secular humanism. Not even the validated testimony of God, himself, or science, or irrefutable evidence prevails. If I may be so blunt, if it were not for the foolish, there would be no religion, no politics, and no patriotism. And worse, religious faith and leftist notions serve to keep the faithful foolish. This is one of many reasons that God requires us to walk away from religious and political babel, corruption and confusion before coming to know Him or engaging in a relationship with Him. Even God cannot reason with the religious or political. The remainder of the martial proverb, through the 27th verse, chronicles the birth of Christianity under Paul's influence, culminating with Yahowah calling out Sha'uwl by name in the closing statement, referring to his hellish influence as the plague of death. All the while God bemoans not being able to enjoy the loving relationship he envisioned with his people as a result of their affinity for religion. It is presented in Volume 1 of Observations, Chapter 9, appropriately entitled Goddamn Religion. 625. This next proverb on our list not only exposes the means to the madness that is religion, but it also explains how God wants us to respond to its arrogant advocates. It is insightful and practical. Those who reject or neglect, azab, those who forsake or disassociate from, those who abandon or ignore, those who lose sight of, cal participle, serving as a descriptive verb depicting actual events, the Torah, the signed, written, and enduring means to search for, find, and choose the instruction, teaching, guidance, and direction which provide answers which facilitate our restoration and return which are beneficial, and right, thereby giving us the opportunity to change our thinking to that which is more beneficial, arrogantly boast and make fools of themselves by extolling, halal, they are flashy, and while pretending to be bright and enlightened they display an improper attitude of haughtiness, glorifying themselves while eulogizing and praising, peel imperfect, the object suffers the effect of the verb on an ongoing basis, that which is wrong, ungodly, and even condemnable, rather, that which is wicked, immoral, and unjust, vexing and criminal. But, those who observe, focusing upon, Shema, those who closely examine and carefully consider, cal participle, the Torah, the source of instruction, teaching, guidance and direction, they take the initiative to oppose and resist them, becoming so overtly hostile to them that they provoke them, garabahem, actively engaging against them, irritating them by not conforming to their influence, pressure, or power, continually disputing them, hitpale imperfect Joseph. They choose of their own free will to consistently strive against the prevailing societal and religious influences, resisting independently and without the assistance of others. Martial, word pictures, Proverb, 28-4. 626. Yisrael all but tossed the Torah away. Today, they dress it up in religious attire and parade it around, but the only Torah rabbis and their ilk study is the religious fraud known as the oral Torah, and it bears no resemblance to what we are considering, as it is filled with rabbis incredulously dissecting one another's vomit. Christians replaced God's Torah with Paul's New Testament, which is like choosing a psychopath over Yahowah. Muslims contradict God with the cruel and immoral drivel of the Quran. And the secularists discount the Torah based upon their arguments against religious beliefs when one has nothing to do with the other. As a result, not even 1 in a million people today are Torah observant. We are so outnumbered by those making fools of themselves by extolling that which is condemnable, God is asking us to speak out against them. With the religious, political, patriotic, and conspiratorial rhetoric so utterly wrong, indeed irrational and moronic, and yet shouted from every phone, tablet, television, and computer, Yahowah wants a rebuttal, even if only one, to leave those who have bought into the lies without excuse. If you have been troubled by my pejorative approach and overtly demeaning and condemning language, you now know that I am doing as Yahowah requested. Having created all three, God is aware that one attracts more flies with honey than vinegar, but neither he nor I are fond of maggots. If you want to eat shit and get sick, that is your choice, not ours. Gara, which is to refute and oppose in a hostile fashion, to provoke, irritate, and dispute, was scribed using the hitpale stem. It reveals that the conscience of the society is not influenced by, or in league with, any human institution, nation, or group. Apart from the covenant and his relationship with God, he has no contributors, partners, alliances, or support and is not motivated by likes, friends, followers, posts, or even retweets. 627. But he does like God. And that means he is not fond of halal because this is Satan's name according to my brother of the same mother, Yashar, Isaiah. In this statement, it was translated as arrogantly boast and make a fool of oneself by extolling nonsense. Halal pretends to be God and thus presents himself as bright, even enlightened, but he is actually all flesh and no substance. A little devilish, he is the purveyor of pride, the patron saint of the progressives, the Ein Sof of Kabbalah, Paul's master and the Christian God, Muhammad's alter ego, and the Adon of the Talmud. Should the Ein Sof be unfamiliar, the Zohar provides the answer: before he gave any shape to the world, before he produced any form, he was alone, without form and without resemblance to anything else. Who then can comprehend how he was before the creation? Hence it is forbidden to lend him any form or similitude, or even to call him by his sacred name, or to indicate him by a single letter or a single point. But after he created the form of the heavenly man, he used him as a chariot wherein to descend, and he wishes to be called after his form, which is the sacred name YHWH. In other words, Ein Sof signifies the nameless being who the Zohar reduces using the term to Ein to say non-existent because God so transcends human understanding as to be practically non-existent. Moving on to our Heavenly Father's next statement, we find that Yahowah is aware of the mechanism which underlies mankind's religious and political schemes, up to and including socialist secular humanism. The purpose of its moral code, political correctness, is to make being judgmental a crime and the truth wrong so that all manner of lies prevail. After all, the best way to fool people is to preclude them from thinking, and there is no better way to do that than to discourage being discriminating. 628 Differentiating between right and wrong, good and bad, truth and deception. Errant, misguided and misleading, wicked and wrong, mischievous and malignant, irrational and immoral, undesirable and worthless, miserable and corrupt, vexing and injurious, individuals, men and people, do not comprehend or inspire, Bynah, do not consider, understand, or have any regard for, imperfect, good judgment, Mishpat, the proper means to resolve disputes, being discriminating or discerning, being fair or just, especially making sound, informed, and reasoned decisions. But, those who diligently seek, Bakosh, those who conduct a meticulous search and a responsible investigation procure the information necessary to learn about and consult with, Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of Yahuwah based upon his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence, consider and understand, Bynah, comprehend, perceive, and realize, making the necessary connections to perceive, imperfect, everything, Sha'uwl. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverb, 28-5. God can be known, but only by those who diligently search his word. And while this requires focus, a receptive mind, and copious amounts of time, the reward goes well beyond knowing Yahowah. Once we come to understand God, everything makes sense. My greatest frustration is the realization that most of what I am sharing is beyond the grasp of the preponderance of people. A confluence of jaundiced notions, political and patriotic, religious and conspiratorial, as well as those from social media and academia, has rendered most incapable of evaluating information efficiently or effectively, even rationally. Their mental processor has been short-circuited, and their programming has become faulty. People have 629 become so clueless they believe unfounded opinions are entitlements equivalent to reasoned conclusions. A slogan such as Black Lives Matter or Free Palestine resonates with today's youth because they are incapable of recognizing that the facts do not support the mantra of these conspiratorial hypocrisies. Progressives have gone so far as to admit that evidence and reason are no longer of concern. Stupid is the new enlightened. In such a world, God's words are wasted. And so, I realize that the most optimistic prognosis for the Bynah we are compiling for God's people is that somehow enough individuals will be receptive to thoughtfully considering Yahowah's offer that he will not be disappointed upon his return on Yom Kippurim. For this to occur, things will have to get so bad for Jews, with every institution they have trusted failing to protect them, that they will give God a chance. Should you wonder how the religious miss this obvious association between the Torah and understanding, between observing it and seeking Yahowah, the answer lies in their errant translations. So as to hold them accountable, and expose their malfeasance, recognize that Yahowah said, "Those who reject or neglect, disassociating from, Azab, the Torah, guidance, Torah, arrogantly boast and make fools of themselves by extolling, halal, that which is wrong, ungodly, and even condemnable, raza. But, those who observe, focusing upon, Shema, the Torah, teaching, Torah, they take the initiative to oppose and resist them, becoming so overtly hostile to them that they provoke them, Garabahem. Errant and misleading, individuals, do not comprehend or inspire, Bynah, good judgment, Mishpat. But, those who diligently seek, Bakosh, 630 Yahowah, Yahowah, consider and understand, Bynah, everything, Sha'uwl. Marshall, Proverb 28-4-5. While there is no correlation of any kind between Torah and law, in the Roman Catholic translation of their Vulgate it was rendered as such. They that forsake the law, praise the wicked man, they that keep it, are incensed against him. Evil men think not on judgment, but they that seek after the Lord, take notice of all things. The essential title Torah was scribed twice in this verse, and yet, the Church elected to mistranslate it in the first instance and ignore it completely in the second. And since the primary meaning of Shema is to observe, by changing it to keep, the connection with seeking was lost. Moreover, the intended message was compromised once again by rendering Bynah as notice instead of to consider and understand. The politically inspired King James Version followed suit. They that forsake the law praise the wicked, but such as keep the law contend with them. Evil men understand not judgment, but they that seek the Lord understand all things. In actuality, it's hard to understand anything when the source of understanding is tampered with in this way. Blazing a trail of their own, the authors of the New Living Translation published, to reject the law is to praise the wicked, to obey the law is to fight them. Evil people don't understand justice, but those who follow the Lord understand completely. I suppose rendering God's word accurately would be bad for business, so it was too much to ask. Since we know that rabbis love laws as much as they hate Yahweh's name, the JPS Tanakh rendition of the proverb should not come as a surprise. They that forsake the law praise the wicked, but such as keep the law contend with them. Evil men understand not justice, but they that seek the Lord understand all things. And that's the 631 problem. While lords are keen on imposing laws, the Lord is Satan, and he is more about Babel, confusion than Bynah, understanding. Integrity is an elegant attribute, albeit lost during the transition from analog to digital in the modern age. Better and more appealing, tov, more content, worthwhile, and productive, is a poor person, rouge, who walks, holak, with integrity, Bartom Hugh, as a whole, complete, and sound individual, than a rich one, Wahuasha, who is crooked and perverse in his ways, Minikesh Derek Hugh, who is morally corrupt and perverted in his conduct. Marshall, Proverb 28-6. One who observes and is preserved, Nazar, a branch who focuses upon and is spared, Kal participle, by the Torah, Torah, teaching and guidance, instructions and directions, is a son, Ben, is a child, who is perceptive and discerning and who understands by being able to distinguish between right and wrong, Bin, who comprehends by being intelligent and diligent, sensible and eloquent, but, Wah, a thoughtless and frivolous, Zalal, an insignificant and wasteful, an undisciplined and rash, a despicable and contemptuous. Either a fearsome or fearing, a riotous or trembling, shepherd, leader, or companion, Ra, ruler or associate, shames his father, Kalam dishonors and humiliates his father, discrediting and mistreating him. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverb 28-7. God has used wealthy men, but he is not impressed by riches or status. Abraham was rich, as was Noach, both Daud and Solomon, too. So, it isn't about money but, instead, integrity, having character and being moral. After all, the richest among us are covenant, where we inherit a share of the universe. With the exponential rise in conspiracy theories and those who believe them, I am often hounded by 632 conspiracists who, desperate for validation, solicit my support. Then when I mock them, as is Yahweh's preference, they purloin my translations, transliterations, and insights as if they were their own, all to claim that Yahowah agrees with them and that they are covenant. But quite the opposite, theirs is a crooked world of perverted notions, half-truths, and outright lies. And ultimately, most of them follow Paul's and Muhammad's example, where after unsuccessfully convincing Jews to join their cause, they become raging anti-Semites. The alternative is Nazar Torah ben Bin, consider Yah's teaching and guidance and become a child of God who understands. It is the best of all worlds. With the Torah as our guide, we can use the past to predict the future. We know where we have been and where we are going, even why we exist. We gain a filter which enables us to canvass the news and determine what is relevant and accurate, even appreciate how these events will influence the world at large. And we become confident, knowing that, as God's children, our lives are protected. This fills us with a sense of purpose and the courage to act because we are inclined to share how much better life is with Yahowah than apart from him, especially now. As I have grown in my bin of the Torah, I have been able to experience people, institutions, and time differently. It is like watching a movie after having read the book. I understand why we are in this mess, and that the plot is about to thicken. I have witnessed the future and appreciate how it is going to play out as we approach Yahowah's return. There is an overwhelming sense of satisfaction and contentment in understanding, and it leads to spiritual intelligence and eloquence God and his people find appealing. With the best of all worlds within our grasp, we find Yahowah unimpressed with the mediocrity of a wasted life. When his people are Sha'uwl, thoughtless, living wasteful 633 and undisciplined lives which makes them common, and thus insignificant, God feels shamed. It is humiliating to have offered so much, to have said and done so much, to see it all squandered. Yahowah wants us to know and understand, to be enlightened and empowered, confident and courageous, so that our guidance mirrors his and serves to liberate and enrich his people, leaving a legacy which is meaningful and enduring. When this occurs, his endurance and his sons' sacrifices are no longer in vain, his words are no longer for naught. So, this is an epiphany, a thoughtless and insignificant shepherd or leader shames and humiliates our Heavenly Father. This discredits his Torah and is abusive of his people and covenant. And so these words are presented for your consideration so that you do not waste your life and dishonor God, shame yourself, or harm your people. Numerous exalted rabbis increase, Rabbi, many greatly esteemed individuals multiply, their wealth, their exorbitant riches and excessive possessions, by improperly demanding fees and bribes, bar nishek, by injuring debtors by charging biting interest, from nashak, to bite, through excessive and exorbitant profiteering, tabith, by taking an unjust and usurious percentage of every transaction to incrementally control indebted individuals, while the one who is generous and compassionate, while the one who is kind and benevolent, inclined to be merciful and favorable, to the disadvantaged and powerless who are in need of assistance, dalim, to the lowly and languishing who need help, the disenfranchised and impoverished who have been deprived, he gathers them for the harvest, kabatz they assemble before him, valued and united in purpose. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverb 28-8. 634 Yahowah would like me to share an example of rabbinical profiteering. They have misappropriated one of the Torah's most important words, Zadak, meaning to be right and thus vindicated. They have corrupted it to Zedakah, which they render as giving money to the rabbis to achieve social justice. They actually have fancy Zedakah boxes into which, every Friday afternoon, they empty their pockets, wallets, and purses which they entrust to the rabbis to apportion according to Talmudic guidance, and that is often to enrich the rabbis and invest in schools that make more of them. There is no longer any correlation between being Zadak, right with God, because their highest calling is the redistribution of money through rabbinical control. Rabbis are paid on average 350% more than their Christian counterparts. They charge a fee for everything, and they control most aspects of Jewish life. Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike, even politicians and the secular media, are prone to prayer, most of which are requests directed at God. And yet, according to God, such acts of petition and devotion are repulsive. This next statement serves as yet another affirmation that Yahowah does not take kindly to those who mislead in the name of religion, causing souls to veer from his straight and narrow path. They will be cast down and incarcerated in the pit, a synonym for Sha'uwl, more widely known as hell. But those who are perfected by remaining on the path Yah has provided, and not wavering from it, their inheritance as his children will be generous, enjoyable, and beneficial. The one who turns away his ear from hearing, Su'as and human Shama, the one who avoids listening to, the Torah, the source of instruction and direction, guidance and teaching, then consequently, Gam, so subsequently surely, his 635 repulsive prayers, abhorrent requests, and errant means to resolve conflicts, Tafalahu, his erroneous manner of speaking which whitewashes the truth, including his loathsome pleas and insipid petitions for intervention which displays a lack of character and is foolish and unseemly, from tafla and tafel, to stupidly and insipidly smear, to foolishly whitewash, covering over in an unseemly and unsavory fashion and palal, the means to mediate, and judge, to resolve issues and to achieve justice. To intercede and intervene, will be considered reprehensible and repugnant, Towrah will be seen as a disgusting abomination and will be associated with religious worship and idolatry, from Torah, an erroneous perversion which confuses and leads astray and top, to be abhorred and detested for having engaged in an abominable religious ritual while intoxicated. Marshall, Proverb 28-9. The one who misleads, Shagga, the one who deceives and leads astray through deliberate error or ignorance, with the hyphal stem, the one doing the misleading causes their victim to embody the same deceptions and in the participle, doing so dramatically, the upright and straightforward, Yashar, those who are not crooked and who are on the level, those who are correct and innocent, in the way, var derek, of error, so that they become immoral and irrational, indeed, religious, in that which is wrong, harmful, malignant, afflicting, and adversarial, improperly severing the relationship, identical to Riyah, loudly conveying a message, shouting it out publicly as a fellow citizen, into his own pit of depression, bar shashuthu, his place of darkness where he is brought down, prostrating himself in worship before false gods and reduced to despair, he will fall and be cast down, Hunafel, he will be diminished, descending from a higher position to a lower one. Bowing down while wasting away, Kal imperfect. 636 But those who are right and truthful, Wa Tamim, those who are correct and have been perfected, who are genuine and unblemished, thus blameless, will enjoy a good, generous, and entirely beneficial inheritance, Tob Nakal, will inherit and acquire that which is agreeable, joyful, and valuable. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverb 28:10. This is one of the most unexpected and yet affirming statements we will ever read. Countless times Yahweh has asked us to listen to him, and yet, he has never once asked us to pray to him. The religious have it all backward, failing to do as God has asked while telling those they have deceived to do the opposite of what he has requested. God is much smarter than we are, so we benefit from listening to what he has to offer. But there is nothing we can tell him that he does not already know. Most of what men and women request of their God is meaningless, self-serving drivel. And yet, the incessant drumbeat of give me this and give me that isn't the most serious problem. God would simply ignore them all. The issue is actually one of respect. To tell God what we want without listening to what he is offering is rude. Therefore, those who turn a deaf ear to the Torah and a flapping tongue to God, his or her tafila, prayers are repulsive, their requests are abhorrent, and their confessions are erroneous and pathetic. Yahweh rightly considers such individuals tawabah, repugnant. He abhors them along with their God-forsaken religion. Jewish, Christian, and Muslim prayer is insulting and abhorred. Just imagine having the courage to say that before the religious. Turns out, the battle the Hasidic rabbis are fighting to keep all women and every non-ultra-Orthodox man from praying at the Western Wall is one that the rest of Israel ought to let them win. That way, when Yahweh annihilates all of those in the black mourning 637 suits, hats, and curlicues upon his return, you and I will not be among them. Most souls simply evaporate upon the ultimate demise of the mortal body housing them. Such individuals did not know Yah and he did not know them. So, there is no reward or penalty, no heaven or hell for them. But, the fate of rabbis and imams, pastors and priests, is quite different. By misleading the faithful, they are digging their own grave. The souls of those who have promoted religious deceptions will be cast down, and endure an eternity in Sha'uwl. As such, hell will be a very religious place, although I don't think the choir will be singing hallelujah. Heaven awaits those who are tamim, truthful and right because those who are correct about God are perfected by him. As the covenant's children, we inherit every beneficial thing Yahweh has created. This includes receiving our share of the universe, comprehensive enlightenment, awesome enrichment, infinite empowerment, and eternal life. It's a pretty good deal, since our contribution is simply being right. Since these were such inspiring and transformative words, let's consider them again. Those who reject or neglect, disassociating from, azab, the Torah, guidance, Torah, arrogantly boast and make fools of themselves by extolling, halal, that which is wrong, ungodly, and even condemnable, raza. But, wa, those who observe, focusing upon, Shema, the Torah, teaching, Torah, they take the initiative to oppose and resist them, becoming so overtly hostile to them that they provoke them, Garabahem. Marshall, Proverb 28:4. Errant and misleading, Ra, individuals, Ish, do not comprehend or inspire, Lo Bin, good judgment 638 Mishpat. But, Wa, those who diligently seek, Bakosh, Yahweh, consider and understand, Bin, everything, Sha'uwl. Marshall, Proverb 28:5. Better and more appealing, more content and productive, Tob, is a poor person, Rush, who walks, Holak, with integrity, Bar Tom Hugh, than a rich one, Wahu Asher, who is crooked and perverse in his ways, Minikesh Derek Hugh. Marshall, Proverb 28:6. One who observes and is preserved, Nazar, by the Torah, teaching and guidance, instructions and directions, Torah, is a child, Ben, who is perceptive and discerning and who understands by being able to distinguish between right and wrong, Bin, but, Wa, a thoughtless and frivolous, Zal, shepherd, leader, or companion, Ra, shames his father, Kalam Abhu. Marshall, Proverb 28:7. Numerous exalted rabbis increase, Rabah, their wealth, Hanhu, by improperly demanding fees and bribes, Bar Nishek, through excessive and exorbitant profiteering, Tarbith, while the one who is generous and compassionate, Lachanan, to the disadvantaged and powerless who are in need of assistance, Dalim, he gathers them for the harvest, Kabatsu. Marshall, Proverb 28:8. The one who turns away his ear from hearing, so as an human Shama, the Torah, then consequently, Gam, his repulsive prayers, abhorrent requests, and errant means to resolve conflicts, tafalahu, will be considered reprehensible and repugnant. Towrah. Marshall, Proverb 28-9. The one who misleads, Shagga, the upright and straightforward, Yasha, in the way, Derek, of error, so that they become immoral and irrational, indeed, religious, Ra, into his own pit of depression, Sha'uwl, he will fall and be cast down, Hugh 639 Nafal. But those who are right and truthful, Tamim, will enjoy a good, generous, and entirely beneficial inheritance. Tob Nakal. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverb 28:10. God has not left us to our own devices. He revealed what we need to know to find the path which leads us home. Moreover, he is not responsible for leaders who are corrupt and unrestrained. They are who they are because they ignored Yahweh's revelation. As we say goodbye to the Proverbs for now, consider this contrast. Without prophetic revelation, Bar and Kazon, with no communication from God, without prophecy, from Chaza, without seeing and perceiving, without understanding, wicked people take charge and become unrestrained, leading the unaware to their death because they lack the ability to respond rationally. Ampara, individuals rule over ignorant people and those in charge take their own initiative, running wild, while the people behave like an uncontrolled mob, unthinking, their responses become inappropriate. But, he who actually observes and genuinely focuses upon, Shema, he who closely examines and carefully considers, Kal participle, literal interpretation of a highly descriptive verb whereby the individual becomes known and is influenced by his willingness to observe, the Torah, the source of teaching, instruction, direction, and guidance, walks along the path which gives meaning to life and is blessed, Asher. Steps forward and strides upright on the correct path to a fortuitous relationship and experiences guidance and teaching, living in a joyous upright life having advanced and progressed along the restrictive, right, certain, and valid, straight path to be encouraged, become prosperous, be 640 enriched, and become safe and secure. Marshall, Word Pictures, Proverb 29:18. The choice is yours. You can place your faith in men running amok, or you can observe the Torah. As always, it is the likes of Akiba, Paul, and Muhammad versus Yahweh's teaching. As we transition from the last proverb to the first psalm, nothing changes. So, you might be wondering why it was necessary to repeat this message regarding the importance of observing the Torah, to which I'd suggest that, even with God's consistent affirmations of the enduring value of his Torah, one man's letters were sufficient to undermine them all. So, since several hundred confirmations were insufficient to prevent this apostasy, how likely is it that a third of that number would undo the damage? If we want to be blessed by God, if we want to receive his favor, we must avoid any association with a political or religious scheme because they are inconsistent with Yahweh's standard and deviate from God's way. Joyful and blessed, Asherah, fortunate and happy in the relationship, stepping along the straightforward and correct path which gives meaning to life, providing the proper place to stand and live, is the individual, who, as a result of the relationship, Asher, who is elated and favored through the association, taking the proper strides to live a productive, prosperous, blessed, and joyful life, does not walk, does not journey through life. In the counsel of those who are religious and incorrect, Bar Eitzar Rasha, in the advice of a con man advocating religious schemes, in the criminal promotion of 641 a revolting authority figure with a plan causing those who believe in it to be unjust, immoral, and condemned, does not remain, Loamod, is not present, does not engage, or endure, in the way, Bar Derek, in the path, of those who are wrong, chatter, of those who should be ostracized for leading people astray and causing them to miss the way. Neither sits nor dwells, Lo Yashab, neither is established nor seated, neither inhabits nor settles down, in the company, Bar Moshab, in the place, congregation, or dwelling, or in the seat or position of power of a ruling socio-religious influence, of those who babble, confounding by scoffing and ridiculing, that's of those who presumptuously interpret and arrogantly deride, mock, and scorn, Mizmor 1-1, but instead, Kym, but by contrast, genuinely and honestly, he desires and delights in, Shephet's. He takes pleasure in and enjoys, Yahowah, an accurate transliteration of the name of Eloah, God guided by his Torah, instructions regarding his higher, existence and our Shalom, reconciliation, Torah, teaching, instruction, direction, and guidance, and on his Torah teaching and guidance, Wabar Torah, and upon his source from which direction and instruction flow, he meditates. Giving serious thought and consideration to the information, he reads and ponders, thinking intently, then decides and speaks, Kal imperfect, actually and continually developing a genuine, and literal relationship, between himself and the Torah with ongoing implications, day and night, Yaum wa Layla. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 1-2. Dowd began his literary love affair with Yahowah celebrating the same word, Asher, that brought us together 22 years ago. Asher defines the proper path to the kind of relationship Yahowah envisioned while also expressing its purpose. Those who celebrate Asher in conjunction with Yah enjoy the beneficial blessings of the relationship. They are elated for having been favored 642 through this association, having taken the proper strides to live a productive, prosperous, and joy-filled life. Asher is the correct, albeit narrow and restrictive, straightforward path which leads to abundant life and which gives every aspect of our existence meaning. Those of us who, like Dowd, David, become God's beloved sons and daughters do so by making an Asher-like connection between Yahowah and his Torah, literally walking to one directly through the other. The first sentence in the first psalm presents a 1-2 punch to the gut of the faithful. First, do not walk in the counsel of someone who is religious and thus incorrect. Do not stand with a person who is wrong and who leads people astray. Neither sit nor dwell in the company of individuals who cause those who believe him to babble, confounding others through their presumptuous interpretations and derisive ridicule. Secondarily, after disassociating from such an institution, desire and delight in Yahowah's Torah teaching, giving his Torah guidance serious thought and consideration day and night. These same recommendations serve as the initial requirements of the covenant. We are asked to walk away from man's influence and then come to trust and rely on Yahowah's guidance. The Beloved's inspired advice is the antithesis of what Rabbi Akiba, Paul, and Muhammad have done. Set in the context of Dowd's opening salvo, of the most beloved and articulate Yahwud, this is exposing and condemning a Yisraelite whose words would be harmful to God's people, in that this is the first thing he would write. Yahowah's favored son is telling us to avoid all association with one of history's most notorious Israelites, leading us to an individual who provided the foundational religious texts of an astoundingly popular belief system. 643 This person would be incorrect by way of his incorporation of pagan mythologies, be wrong in that his message misses the way, leading countless people astray, all while causing his victims to babble, confounding the masses by presumptuously misinterpreting and arrogantly deriding Yahowah's Torah testimony. There are only three who can be considered as having fulfilled the condemning prophecy: Paul, who was a Benjamite, as he is the subject of Acts and the author of 14 Christian New Testament books; Akiba, the father of Rabbinic Judaism who caused the diaspora by promoting a false Messiah; and Muhammad, who was likely a Yahwud, Jew, Allah's lone messenger, the pedophile and rapist, mass-murdering terrorist who first regurgitated the vomit known as the Quran. If you'd like proof that this is accurate and not pejorative, read Prophet of Doom. All three men sponsored mountainous amounts of rasha, chatter, and let's, but only one of these men overtly hated Yahowah's Torah. Only one predicated his religion on the renunciation of the Torah and sought to presumptuously deride and mock it out of existence. Sha'uwl, question him, now known as the Apostle Paul. To ridicule Yahowah's Torah, replacing it with the Babel of the Bible, is, therefore, rasha, wrong. Dowd, David, Yahowah's beloved son, his Mashiach, anointed, is telling all who would listen that no man or woman should walk, stand, or sit anywhere near Sha'uwl, question him, Paul or those his writings have beguiled, Christians. It is sad that so many have gotten all twisted up in the notion of a Jesus Christ, someone who never existed. And in the process, they have denied Dowd, Yahowah's only Mashiach, Melech and Ben, his favored writer and singer, the heir to the covenant and to the throne of Yisrael. Most 644 Importantly, the author of the Mizmor, Psalms fulfilled the Miqra'ey, invitations to be called out and meet God. As the branch and firstborn, Dowd continually and prolifically serves as the embodiment of Yahowah's most insightful and prolific metaphors. He wants us all to grow out of the foremost branch of the tree of lives, using what can be gleaned from a discriminating analysis of the tree of the knowledge of good and bad to get from one to the other. As stems grafted into and growing out of the tree planted in the heart of Gan Eden, the garden of great joy, our lives become satisfying and productive. Then, he is like, Hayakah, he is during that time comparable to, Kal perfect, a tree, etz, planted, Shathal, transplanted, rooted, and flourishing, near, Al, close to, an idyllic stream of flowing water, Peleg Mame, the outpouring of the perfect amount of water through a channel cut open to the ideal size to cultivate plants and bring prosperity by way of a marvelous and wonderful supply of the source of life and cleansing, such that as a result of this beneficial relationship, Asher, to reveal the straightforward and correct path to get the most out of life, he produces and bestows, Nathan, he yields and gives, Kal imperfect, actually and consistently presents, his fruit, Peri Hu, the result of what he produces, his harvest and descendants, in his appointed time, Bar Eth Hu, in the right season and proper occasion for him, from Ad, into perpetuity, continuously forevermore. Its uplifting branches and foliage, Wa Ale Hu, his secondary extensions which grow up from the trunk of the tree and leaf out, will never wither and he will never lack understanding, lo noble, will not shrivel up or lose their vitality, will never be played for a fool or be held in contempt, he will never tire or become weary, will never lose heart or be concerned regardless of the circumstances. 645 Because he will never be stupid and will always have the capacity to comprehend and understand. Cal imperfect. In everything that he engages in, wa shel asar, with all he does, acts upon, and carries out, in the totality of his undertakings, considerable efforts, endeavors, and labor, cal imperfect, to show the way to the benefits of the relationship, Asher, to bless by revealing the proper and straight path to walk to give life meaning, he will succeed and prosper, Zalak, he will successfully accomplish the mission, he will be useful and thrive, he will win the argument, and be acquitted. Emerging correct and victorious, hyphal imperfect, the subject continually causes the object to engage, with the one spoken about becoming ever more similar over time to the one speaking to him. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 1:3. Just as Adam was asked to work in Eden's garden and Daud was asked to plant Zion's garden, we are encouraged to be fruitful and productive, to till the soil so that it is receptive, to pull the weeds that would choke out the desirable vegetation, to prune the vines so that they are healthy and strong, and to water the plants, always cognizant of the importance of removing any invasive species, so that the good vines have unfettered access to the light. It is among Yahweh's favorite metaphors, going right back to the beginning of time with the fruitful and special trees growing in the garden, and the 4 streams flowing out of it. Those who make these connections will never lack understanding. This is not so, lo ken, it is not true, nor even remotely similar, with those who are incorrect, ha-rasha, the invalid and unrighteous who are wrong about and opposed to the standard, the wicked and immoral con men and criminals who will be condemned for leading others astray and for misrepresenting God's character, but who 646 rather instead are like, Kym, the chaff, Hamo, the useless and dried husks, which is driven away, Asher Nadaphu, and which for the benefit of the relationship is refuted. By the Spirit, Ruach, by the wind. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 1:4. Fruit, and most especially grain, serves as a metaphor for souls who are harvested by God. So, we should not be surprised that chaff is used to describe the souls who are not saved. The husks surrounding kernels of grain represent lives which are squandered. Since ruach is the Hebrew word for wind in addition to spirit, this would be a good place to pause a moment and reflect on the nature of spirits and the difference between a spirit and a soul. Like ruach, nipesh conveys both breath and soul. These dual meanings are both instructive. Our souls represent our unique mortal life and consciousness, and thus, it not only comes from inside of us, its cessation is a sign of death. And while there are many spirits, and all are estranged from us initially, they are encountered from outside, just like the wind. Those who find pleasure in God's Torah teachings, those who yearn for God's instructions and who refer to His guidance, speak forcefully, emotionally, and powerfully on Yah's behalf. But their thoughtful and impassioned declarations are drowned out by the roar of religious rhetoric. For just as chaff is indigestible and withered, such souls are not receptive. Blown by the wind, they never pause long enough to thoughtfully compare Yahweh's testimony to the religious corruptions of it. Those who appreciate the nuances found in the Torah guidance of Yahweh know that both standing upright and bowing down are symbolic concepts, and with regard to these polar opposites, God's view is the antithesis of the religious perspective. In religion, man bows down to God. But in the Torah, it is God who gets down on his 647 symbolic knees to lift us up so that we can stand upright in his presence. But there is an exception to this rule, one circumstance where certain individuals will not only be unable to stand with God, but they will also be forced to bow down in his presence in judgment. The religious and political leaders, who compelled others to bow before them will find themselves on their knees. Therefore, al-Ken, based upon this reasoning, it is true that, those who are incorrect, ha-rasha, the invalid and unrighteous who are wrong about the standard, the wicked and immoral con men and criminals who will be condemned for leading others astray and for misrepresenting God's character, will not stand upright, lo quum, will not be upright, rise up, be confirmed, nor restored, kal imperfect, during the judgment, vaha mishpat, when justice is administered, during the time disputes are resolved, when good judgment is practiced, nor, wa, those who are wrong, chatter, those who are culpable and will be condemned for leading people astray and who have missed the way, in the enduring community of witnesses, bar-ida, in the gathering together of those who always remember the agreement and testify affirmatively regarding it, of those who are upright, correct, and vindicated, tzaddik, righteous, just, right, in accord with the standard, acquitted, and innocent. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 1:5. When Yah speaks in Yashar every knee bowing before him, it is because God is judging earth's political and religious leaders. Similarly in this witness, those who choose not to stand with Yah in this life will not be able to stand with God when it is over. They will bow down before him in judgment. Yahweh's covenant family is being addressed as Eda Zardik, the enduring community of correct 648 witnesses. It is the fruit of the tree nourished by the teaching and guidance which flows out of the Torah. It is our highest calling. There is no job more rewarding or beneficial. What follows reaffirms something else we have learned: Yahweh knows his children, and other than those bowing in judgment, he has no interest in the rest of humanity. Indeed, Yahweh, the proper pronunciation of the name of Eloah, God has directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence and Arshalam, restoration, knows, Yada, recognizes and acknowledges, is aware of and respects, is familiar with and is concerned about, understands and is very friendly with, Kal, the way, Derek, the manner and journey, of those who are upright, correct, and vindicated, Zardik, righteous, just, right in accord with the standard, acquitted, and innocent, but, Wah, those whose path is incorrect, Derek Rasha, those whose way is invalid and opposed to the standard, whose journey leads others astray, will perish, are bad, will be blotted out and destroyed, exterminated and annihilated, vanishing and ceasing to exist, squandered and expelled. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 1:6. If you want to be Yada, known by God, be Zardik, right regarding God. And the only way to do that is to disassociate from those who are Rasha, wrong. Haggah, meditate upon, giving serious thought and consideration to the information contained in Yahweh's Torah. Those who observe Yahweh's Torah are right, blessed with knowledge and understanding, joyful and productive, validated and vindicated, and always correct on the issues which matter most, especially those regarding life or death. Those who believe man's mantras, whether they be political or religious, conspiratorial or militaristic, 649 will remain confounded and confused, they will be judged and found to be wrong, exterminated and expelled. Inexplicably, conspiracy has become the fastest growing religion, challenged in stupidity and popularity only by progressive wokeism. The numbers are staggering, with the majority of people worldwide snookered by one hoax or another. For most, they are looking for someone to blame for their unfulfilling lives. The menace has grown so large and vocal, scientific studies have been conducted to determine what prompts so many people to believe in and promote absurdly ridiculous notions. What they have found is that there is but one common denominator among conspiratorialists. It isn't age, politics, ethnicity, nationality, or religion, but instead, they are all losers. Unwilling to accept responsibility for their unsatisfactory and empty existence, they fault those deemed successful for controlling and inhibiting them. The most enduring and popular conspiracies, indeed the most deadly and delusional, purport that Jews control the world to the detriment of everyone else. While most conspiracy theorists are sufficiently anti-Semitic to endorse even the most obvious hoaxes, such as protocols of the Elders of Zion, they now use social media to promote an ever-growing, and ever more ridiculous array of control fantasies. Yahweh would not have wasted a moment on these wasted lives if it were not for three issues, all of which involve his people. First, the most prevalent and destructive conspiracy has been and remains, blame the Jews. Paul originated and popularized the religious rendition of this game. Rome played it diabolically and 650 destructively. The Catholic Church has perpetrated the longest-running, most pervasive and pathetic version, going so far as to say that Jews, not Romans, killed their God. Of course, Islamic jihadists have committed the deadliest rendition of blame the Jews. Second, conspiracies comprise the worst form of Babel. Their proponents not only ignore obvious and provable explanations, rejecting that which is valid and verifiable, they commingle all manner of deceptions, suggesting that the truth is found in a concoction of lies. They slander everyone who reveals that they are ridiculous and then reinforce their mythology by snickering among themselves. They are universally less receptive to evidence and reason than the most religious or political devotees. By clinging to such ridiculous babel, the conspiratorialists are prohibited from participating in the covenant. Third, promoting inane interpretations of readily explainable events under the title truthers has a tendency to repel thoughtful individuals while ensnaring fellow morons. So, to give them the credibility needed to attract and hold ever more devotees, they need to mix their lies with enough truth to make the self-proclaimed saviors appear believable. And since nothing has ever been as credible as Yahweh's words, they are used as a veneer to glue the chaff of conspiracy together such that it will fool enough fools for the foolish to have a following. This isn't a remote or isolated problem. Conspiracy sites have latched onto my translations, transliterations, and insights and have claimed them as their own, as if they wrote them. Hundreds, if not thousands of people have been led to question these translations of Yahweh's words, even reject them, not on their merits but instead based upon their incorporation into social media sites promoting the most absurd conspiracies. Worse, The gaggle of goons on these sites call themselves Covenant, they 651 use Yahowah's name, and weave insights that are known only through these books through their texts and threads. If there were hundreds of sites and audio programs devoted to accurately translating Yahowah's words and freely sharing the insights derived from them, this problem would be less catastrophic, but because they are few, and most are related to these translations, the conspiratorialists have enraged the one calling his people home. He is so angry that he even predicted their influence by referring to them. For what reason, lama, why, toward what end and for what purpose one should ask, do noisy and confused throngs of scheming and rebellious Gentiles gather together to conspire in open defiance, ragash goim, do vociferous and disorderly crowds of restless religious, political, and militant ethnicities and countries estranged from Israel rise up vehemently to hastily agitate in fellowship with one another, with races attempting to be noticed and gain attention through their perceived and contrived plots, erupting like an open wound, swirling around and churning things up for the moment, creating a disturbing tumultuous commotion as part of an unrestrained cult of worshippers for a time by hurriedly conceiving and promoting clandestine conspiracies. The people of these nations who are transformed while massing under an antiquated and unifying religious, political, and conspiratorial leader, while these groups who associate and gather together under an individual who changes them in some way as a result of primitive and arcane concepts, choose to plot and speak, Haggah, are driven away by their choices and utterances, having wrongly decided after selectively searching, muttering their musings aloud along with their imagined grievances and intrapersonal beliefs, all formed after giving considerable attention to selective information to 652 scheme to remove the people who are the focus of their complaint, imperfect jussive, continually and literally doing so on their own initiative, in vain, deluded in their fantasies, by promoting their unreal claims and worthless myth for absolutely no reason, having drawn their weapons as paid warriors without benefit, without an actual reason or cause, while revealing their unfulfilling and empty lives and dissatisfaction with their situation. These uninhibited scoundrels brandish idle plans, puffery and dreams, and attack to their disadvantage. Mizmor, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 2:1. This is prophetic of our day when conspiracies, especially those which inappropriately impugn Jews, are so prolific they are woven into the fabric of the human psyche. When the opposite of what is true becomes widely accepted, we find God asking his creation why they are promoting such stupid conspiratorial notions. What is the end game? What is the purpose? What is to be gained by these ragash goim, noisy and confused throngs of unrestrained, scheming, and rebellious Gentiles conspiring together in open defiance, such that as a cult they have become wholly unreceptive to the truth? They have become akin to zombies, in that they, like the mindless walking dead, have nothing to live for except to prey on those they have not yet infected. It is interesting to note that, while Haggah is often used to refer to the conspiratorial plots originating in the hearts and minds of wicked men, those who then give expression to their deceitful conspiracies by lying about them, the word is used in both Yeshaya, Isaiah 16:7 and Yirmiyah, Jeremiah 48:31 to express the imagined grievances and beliefs associated with the modern manifestation of Mawop, resulting in the decision to drive them out of the land before exterminating them. Earlier in Yeshaya 8:19, Haggah is associated with the conspiratorial musings of those in concert with the adversary. But it also has a 653 positive side, with Yahowah using it to encourage his people to ponder the proper response, so as to communicate intelligently. Every conspiracy man has invented and popularized is invalid. Moreover, making the case for the conception and continuance of clandestine schemes is far too convoluted to warrant the effort. These theories require their advocates to be highly selective in the information they consider while disregarding all evidence to the contrary. And in the end, what does one achieve other than to say that men tend to be conniving and controlling, deceitful and destructive? With the exception of Daud and his son, and only in Israel, no government has been authorized or established by God. And even then, Yahowah only acted after the Yisraelites rejected his shafot, judges. Having made the decision to follow in the ways of the Gentiles rather than being Torah observant, God figured that, since they were insistent on a king, his preference for a shepherd might set a good example. This, of course, means that Paul lied in his repulsive letter to the Romans and again in Hebrews, as did the Roman Catholic Church, which grew out of his perverse doctrine. God is as opposed to government as he is to religion, as opposed to militaries as he is to conspiracy. He disdains these human contrivances because they are counterproductive and self-serving, having been created and perpetuated by the worst among us. The rulers, Melech, the governmental leaders, of the earth, Eres, the material realm and land, solely on their own initiative, continually set themselves up, Yazar, prominently present themselves without justification or authorization, take a stand and defend themselves, serving only themselves, thereby committing themselves, hitpale imperfect, consistently on their own 654 initiative, without any outside influence, authorization, justification, or authority. Those who govern, Rosen, political leaders and their governments, those claiming authority, lay a foundation to conspire and rebel, Yasad, have from the beginning schemed to rise up, Nephil perfect. Those who govern will not only conspire at some point in time, they will suffer the effects of their rebellion, altogether, Yakad, in a united fashion, against, Al, and over and above, Yahowah, Yahowah, and, Wah, against, Al, over and above, his Mashiach, anointed, Mashiach, to set apart for his service. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 2:2. There are those who claim that God has chosen the leaders of nations and that he is guiding them. They would all be wrong. They have always been wrong. And in this case, the Hitbaal mood serves as proof, revealing that they have acted on their own initiative. Religious and political schemes have been two sides of the same coin. They are human contrivances designed to achieve the same result, to concentrate authority, power, control, property, and wealth among the few. It is why Yahowah could not find a single individual through whom to convey his message for thousands of years. One of the interesting things about being Mashiach, anointed, is that the recipient is separated and set apart from all others and thus cannot be seen as integrated into a popular religion or movement. At the time this was written, there was only one man who had been Mashiach, anointed by Yahowah, the author of this psalm, David. To be Mashiach in the most positive and authorized sense as Yahowah defined the concept, one has to be anointed with olive oil at Yahowah's direction. Daud was anointed 3 times and will live 3 lives as the Messiah. And in Daniel 9, he is speaking of himself as the Mashiach, enabling the promises of the 655 Miqra'ey, beginning with Pesach and Matsah, by fulfilling them. As such, there is no prophetic basis for another Messiah, much less a Jesus Christ. This is wonderful news for Yisrael. Daud is their savior. HaMashiach, the anointed Messiah and returning Ra, shepherd and Melech, king, Yahowah's Ben Bakar, firstborn son, is one of their own. They can find him and unite with him by reading the Nabi wa Mizmor. And that is a good thing because Yahowah is returning with his beloved son on Yom Kippurim. It is also good riddance. The anti-Semitic Christian Messiah crafted into the image of Dionysus is nothing more than a graven image, a tortured one at that. So now that the identity of HaMashiach is known, how many Jews will return to Yahowah and accept Daud for his role in their redemption and reconciliation? Without a miracle, the returnees will likely number in the thousands, not millions. This assessment is derived from the realization that Yisraelites are becoming ever more polarized and estranged from Yahowah. Progressive Jews are generally atheists and are typically anti-Israel. Religious Jews venerate rabbis and have no loyalty to anyone or anything other than themselves. The overtly political and religious are now cocooned beyond reach, listening only to the voices of those similarly deceived. The margin between these extremes is fairly small, with a decided minority of ethnic Jews capable of disavowing both sides of the shekel. And yet, based upon the covenant's enduring prerequisite, it is just the thin edge of this coin for whom there is any hope of salvation. Even with Yahowah reopening the eyes, ears, and minds of his people, the best predictor of future behavior is the past, suggesting that I will have likely composed more pages of translations and insights than there will be Jews who read them. 656, but it will be their choice. Ours has been to inform and welcome them home. And Yahowah has done everything he has promised and more. Whether the saved among the surviving remnant of Yah would number 7,000 or 7 million, there is more than enough of Yahowah and the universe to share. No matter whether the final gathering is numerous or intimate, our Father and his family will enjoy every moment, and there will be an eternity of marvelous experiences. Statements like the one we have just read should have been sufficient to convince every thinking individual to disavow religious and political authority. Their worthless and delusional doctrines are overtly opposed to Yahowah, his people, and his Torah. This is especially true in Rabbinic Judaism, where men have lifted themselves up above the Most High. The words of rabbis prevail over the revelations of Yah. Should you doubt this, search any subject in Judaism. You will find that the religious cite rabbis over Yahowah 10-1, always crediting the rabbi by name while never even mentioning Yahowah. They even superseded his Torah with their own. Recognizing that the last sentence concluded by saying that those in positions of authority had joined together to conspire to rebel against Yahowah and against his anointed, what follows is the proper response. Daud knows that, while man seeks to control men, God wants to free men. He understands that we must break free of human religious and political, military and conspiratorial dominion before we can participate in the covenant. So, at this time, Daud, Yahowah's Mashiach and Ra, is encouraging us to break free of all forms of institutional influence. Let us choose of our own volition to break and pull off, Nathak, to snap off and tear away, being set free, and 657 separated from, feel imperfect cohortative, their bonds which trap and ensnare, ethmosrahem, that which binds and immobilizes, their spinnerets and tethers, their fetters, shackles, and chains, and thus religious and political restraints, man's yokes which control and tame, and, desire to cast off and throw away, shalak, reject, cast away and fling, hyphal cohortative imperfect, from us. Minanaknu, their twisted and interwoven threads which bind and immobilize, are both hem, their fibrous ropes and cordage, their intertwined web of silky and sticky spinnerets which fasten and tie, that which they can twist and pervert to harness and control. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 2:3. Since this has not occurred on a meaningful scale at any point in history, it is prophetic and speaks of our time. This is Dowd calling out to us in the present day, hoping that his people will listen to him, and remove the twisted, interwoven, and entangled threads which bind them to misguided political and religious beliefs. This must occur before Yisraelites can return to Yahowah. So, if you are reading this and have not done so, if you are still a bit political or religious, pull off the remaining shackles and throw them away. It is a simple truth, and yet, one which is in conflict with everything we have been indoctrinated to believe. To be free, we must be apolitical, neither voting nor submitting. To be saved, we must be anti-religious, neither believing nor participating. To be right with God, we must acknowledge all that is wrong with man. There is no path to the covenant, no way into heaven, and no means to reconciliation, which is accessible through any religious or political ideal. It isn't until we free ourselves from these bonds that we are free to know and approach Yahowah. 658, as we consider what follows, recognize that Yahowah is laughing at those who have conspired to oppose him, and who have sought to ensnare his people. He is mocking those who have misrepresented him. He who inhabits, establishing his dwelling place, Yashab, he who sits and restores, lives and renews, in the heavens, Bahar Shamaim, in the spiritual realm, holds them in contempt and will pulverize them, Sashak, mocks and scoffs at them, lacking any concern over rubbing his adversaries the wrong way because he disrespects and disdains them, seeing them as a source of derision over whom he scoffs, Kalim perfect. Yahowah, Yahowah, the proper pronunciation of the name of Eloah, God is directed in his Torah, teaching regarding his higher existence and our Shalom, restoration, ridicules their foreign behavior and mocks their unfamiliar language, La'id Lahem, scoffs and disparages their unintelligible stammering and holds them in contempt, Kalim perfect. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 2:4. For most of human history, God has ignored the political and religious mumblings of man. The lone exceptions have been when it either occurred in the Promised Land or the suffering of his people became too great for them to bear. What we have not seen is Yahowah scoffing with disdain over the ridiculousness of man's behavior and unintelligible stammering. Therefore, this is prophetic of the days leading up to his return when evil reaches a menacing crescendo. The idea of God being amused that our leaders actually believe that they have the authority or ability to oppose him, and of him toying with them, then laughing at them, may be uncomfortable for some to hear. But if we were to put ourselves in his sandals, it is how we would react after observing an imbecilic imam blow himself and his class of 659 would-be terrorists to smithereens in a case of premature detonation. Man's attempts at being religious are all pathetic. Further, Yahowah has every right to hold those who have claimed to speak for him, particularly in Latin, the language of the beast, in contempt for subjugating his people. They deserve to be pulverized based upon what they have done and are continuing to perpetrate. It should not be surprising that he ridicules their unintelligible statements and immoral behavior. But this will be no laughing matter. Then, as, at this time and place, he will communicate, expressing himself, Tabar, toward them, Elhem, showing his frustration and resentment, Bar-Hu, in his overt animosity and resolute anger. His burning indignation, Bar-Charan-Hu, demonstrating his intense hatred and resounding anger, will overwhelm and bewilder them, Bahal-Hem, causing them to tremble by terrifying them, Peel imperfect. Mizmor, lyrics, Psalm 2:5. This is prophetic of what we should expect in year 6000 year, in the fall of 2033 on our Roman pagan calendars. Here we find God holding those in leadership positions within society accountable. Before sending those who misled and abused his creation while claiming to represent him off to their eternal incarceration, he is going to excoriate them. So much for the judge not lest you be judged theory. What follows reads far more naturally in Dowd's voice. He is setting the example we should follow. I myself have offered leadership, wa any Nazak, and I have exercised my authority by pouring forth guidance, Cal perfect, providing counsel through my governance, Melech any, offering my advice to consider, 660 upon, Al, alongside, Zion, the signs posted along the way, Zion, my set-apart mountain, Har Kodesh any. Mizmor, Psalm 2:6. I will choose to account for, proclaiming in writing, Sapah, I will, of my own free will, record and recount, putting the decree into effect by informing through written communication and documentation, Peel imperfect cohortative, the decree and prescription for living, Cook, the clearly written announcement on that which cuts us into the relationship, of the Almighty, of God, which Yahowah, an accurate transliteration of the name of Eloah, God guided by his Torah. Instructions regarding his higher existence and our Shalom, reconciliation, said, Amar, declared, Kal perfect, to me, Eni, of me and regarding me, you are my son, Ben Eni Otter. This day, Ha-Yam, at this time and in the light of day, I, Eni, bring you forth as your father, Yilod Otter, am responsible for you as a father raises a child such that they grow, bearing and assisting you. Mizmor, Psalm 2:7. The overt proclamation of the second psalm is that David is both Ha-Mashiach, the Messiah and Ben, the Son of God. These realizations are two of the three most valuable truths Jews allowed Peter and Paul, the Romans and their Gentile church, to steal from him and them. The other is that David fulfilled Pesach and Matsah on behalf of Kipurym and Sukah in year 4000 33 CE. By having done so, by not defending Daud and retrieving what rightfully belonged to them, Jews brought on their diaspora from Yahowah, Daud's father, and the hellish treatment they have endured thereafter upon themselves. The integration of Daud into the lyrics of his own psalm affirms that he is providing guidance we'd be wise to consider. As Yahowah's chosen Messiah, King, Shepherd, and Prophet, he had the authority to provide 661 counsel for humankind to ponder, and there is no question that Daud took his role seriously, pouring out God's guidance through every word he wrote. It is Daud's lyrics which were inscribed on the signs posted upon Zion. He revealed the way to God in every psalm, most especially the 19th and 119th on the Torah and the 22nd and 88th as the one fulfilling the modim in this same place. Zion is as much Daud's as it is Yahowah's. Both had homes built upon the ridgeline. Daud is rightfully taking credit for his role in bringing man to the covenant through the Torah and for the unique place he earned with God. Our work on Yahowah's behalf, our willingness to do as Daud has done in exposing and condemning man's ways while sharing Yah's words, should also be a source of great satisfaction and accomplishment for us today. Over time, we will all come to appreciate Yah's love affair with this man, recognizing that Daud exemplifies the Torah's purpose, which is to perfect the imperfect and make us right with God. His intellect, passion, courage, confidence, character, and ability to reason were endearing. His capacity to understand, then brilliantly share the insights he derived from the Torah, earned him a special place in Yahowah's plans. Feel free to ask questions about this, seeking to learn the answers, because from me, shall any, of your own free will choose to inquire and request from me, questioning why, imperative, there will be an inherited share of the land of the Gentile nations that will be given to you and unto successive generations, Gawim Nashala Otter, part of your inherited property and heritage will come from places that are not part of Yisrael, even unto, the distant reaches of the earth and the material realm, Aphes Eres, the ends of the earth and the finality of the region, becoming your 662 property, a chooser otter, a gift to you, a place which belongs to you. Mizmor, Psalm 2:8. There is only one way for Daud, the author of this Mizmor, to provide this inheritance on behalf of Yisraelites, and that is to fulfill all of the Miqra'ey, from Pesach and Matsah to Kipurym and Sukah. Without having provided the benefits attributed to Passover and unyeasted bread, there would be no firstborn children enriched by the promise of 7 and no inheritance. There would also be no heralds and, thus, no Towrah. And it will be as a result of his return on Kipurym, when he reconciles the relationship between Yisra'el and Yahuwah while obliterating the anti-Semitic Gawim, that he will make it possible for Yahweh to inherit the earth the Gentile had occupied and corrupted. The children of the covenant will camp out with father and son thereafter in a land like Eden. I suppose one might label these insights as profound. You shall break up their evil nature and shatter their mistaken ways, Rahem. You shall destroy their wickedness and tear asunder their inclination to mislead, while smashing and splintering their pastors, with an iron staff and scepter, Bar Basel Shebeth, with a rod, stick, or club as a smelted iron implement, as if they were, like a potter's, Yowza, someone molding earthen objects out of clay, vessel as a means to contain and control, Kali, implement to imprison based upon one's longings. Container to constrain and annihilate, object of desire and weapon to possess, and yoke to tame and direct based upon one's gut instincts and emotions, from Kali, and Kalia, means to accomplish something, to determine someone's fate, to exhaust and consume them, causing them to cease, to perish, and to vanish, even imprisoning them, finishing them by failing them. Destroying them emotionally, and then, you will shatter and separate them, Nafaxhem, you will break 663 up their fragile and brittle objects, destroying them. Mizmor, Psalm 2:9. In his renouncement of the beast of Rome, which would torture him on Passover, Dowd told Daniel that it would be comprised of iron and clay. Therefore, with the mention of an iron staff or scepter, even a molten metal rod or stick, because these are such odd things to construct out of lead, we should envision Yahowah wielding Dowd's legitimacy against the illegitimacy of this beast. This is particularly true because the Romans who mocked, whipped, and crucified God's Son, evolved into Roman Catholicism, the Holy Roman Empire, the Third Reich, and the European Union. What Yahowah will be shattering to facilitate this inheritance will be man's means to mold implements of control. He will be liberating his creation from his creation. Those who have sought to reinforce their positions and lord over others will discover just how fragile they are when compared to the one they have opposed. But, of course, more than this, by carrying his people's guilt with him into Sha'uwl and depositing it there during Matsah, Dowd liberated his people such that they would no longer be bound by their mistakes. Therefore, now, Otter, political and religious leaders, military and government officials, Melech, sovereign heads of state, kings and potentates, presidents and prime ministers, choose to be prudent and circumspect, Sazel, show some insight and discretion, and elect to heed this warning, Yashar, choose to accept this correction or endure the conditional punishment, making the rational decision to defend, Shafot, exercising good judgment, the land, Erez, the earth. Mizmor, Psalm 2:10. Between now and Dowd's return, one's fate is going to hinge upon their stance on Yisrael. Every political and 664 religious leader, each military and government official, who isn't circumspect in this regard, who isn't choosing wisely and opts to oppose Yahowah's people and place, will be destroyed. One's patriotism and faith will be their undoing. This continues to be a referendum on Dowd, the beloved son, and his prophetic insights regarding what father and son will achieve together, and it is the point Yahowah is reinforcing at the conclusion of the second Mizmor. With reverence and respect, in admiration and deference, work with and serve alongside, Abad expend considerable energy and intensity to the mission of accompanying with, Yahowah, and rejoice, Wajil, and be joyful over the most favorable situation, to the point of quivering, Rod. Mizmor, Psalm 2:11. Dowd's passion to serve was equal to his intellect. As a result, he is our point of contact with Yahowah. He opened the door and set out the welcome mat so we could come home. Father and son worked together so that we might live. However, to have made this sacrifice only to have it discredited by the religious is an unconscionable crime against the people to whom it was offered. As you consider Dowd's next pronouncement, please take note of his use of bar instead of ben for son. To show how unusual this is, bar only appears 4 times while ben is used on nearly 5,000 occasions in the Torah, Nabi, Wa Mizmor. This next refrain speaks about our perceptions of Dowd and of the consequence of disrespecting him, which is a life or death decision. We are being told that our fate 665 is subject to our perceptions regarding the Messiah and Son of God. This is because he is our Savior, the one who endured Pesach and Matsah to make Kipurym, Shabat, and Towrah possible. His sacrifice is the source of eternal life, leading to the perfection of our souls and subsequent adoption into the covenant family. The connection between Dowd and salvation calls for a unique word like bar. More than a ben, son, the Messiah is bar, the radiant and favorite son, the brilliant and purifying heir. Dowd is the basher, chosen one and, therefore, Yahowah's bar, favorite son. Dowd is intellectually brilliant, as we learned, but he is also returning as bar, brilliant as the son. And by serving to fulfill the Miqra'ey, Dowd bar, purifies the souls of the covenant's children, providing the bar, ultimate inheritance. Reach out and touch, contacting as a sign of affection, demonstrating your mutual adoration for the relationship, nashak, passionately brush up against and be seen together with, even kindle a fire alongside and kiss to demonstrate your affinity for, with the radiant and favorite son, the brilliant and purifying heir, var, the illuminating and enlightening child with an inheritance who chose to provide moral cleansing and intellectual understanding. Selected and dispatched to conceive supernatural children who are radiant, fostering favoritism among those choosing to participate in this special relationship as sons and daughters, contributing to the conception of descendants who are bright and pure, akin to cleansed and purified grain, thereby paving the way to an inheritance, to enlightenment, and to comprehension, lest, to eliminate any apprehension that, he becomes indignant and displeased, anaf, he becomes angry and averse, and you perish. Abad, you are destroyed. Ceasing to exist for having squandered the opportunity by 666 wandering away, Kal imperfect, in this way, Derek, in this manner. For indeed, because, his righteous indignation, Afu, his resentment and animosity, can be kindled, can be ignited and caused to burn, for a few and for very little, meat, for a trifling few, comparatively, car. Joyful with me and blessed by me, Asherah, fortunate in the relationship with me, stepping along the straightforward and correct path which gives meaning to life with me, providing the proper place to stand and live as a benefit, a compound of Asher, to benefit relationally with any, me, are all, Sha'uwl, is everyone, who put their trust in him, Chaser Bahu, who find the safe place by relying on him and confiding in him, seeking refuge along with him. Mizmor, lyrics to be sung, Psalm 212. By relying upon what Daud has done we are blessed. And by denying his role in fulfilling the Miqra'ey, as is the case in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, souls die estranged from God. The Messiah made the ultimate sacrifice, and for having done so, he deserves our respect. He saved those who answer the Miqra'ey and accept the Berith. Those who benefit from both not only recognize and appreciate what he has achieved but, also, we come to love him as we do his Father. Daud not only volunteered to accomplish the most loving and generous act in human history, he announced what he would do 1,000 years in advance through the lyrics of his Mizmor, Psalms. Sadly, Jews, as a result of their rabbis, deny everything he said and did. Almost as troubling, Gentiles created the world's most popular religion by robbing the Messiah of his accolades and accomplishments. 667 This juxtaposition of right and wrong, beneficial and counterproductive, truth and deception, has never been this extreme. It is, therefore, the line Father and Son have drawn in the sands of time. The distinction between life and death is predicated upon our acceptance of what Father and Son have accomplished.